Hello there, very good evening. You're watching London Live News at 6 with Anthony Baxter. Coming up, set for release, the Parole Board says the mother of baby P should be freed from jail after serving more than 12 years for the death of the Tottenham toddler. The government says it will appeal. A Conservative MP has come out as trans hours after the PM reportedly made a joke about trans issues at a London party. Boris Johnson today addressed Jamie Wallis in Parliament. We'll have that moment for you. Also on the way, an update on London's weather, things turning noticeably colder out there over the next few days. Plus, the award-winning comedian Jenny Bede is heading for Soho Theatre with a show exploring the start of her career and life as a struggling actor. And from the stalls to the stage, how an usher was given a last-minute call-up to perform in the West End's Dirty Dancing after sickness led to a cast shortage. All of that to come. First, though, this evening, the mother of baby P, the Tottenham toddler who died in 2007 after months of abuse, is set to be released from prison. The Parole Board confirmed earlier that it had decided Tracy Connolly should be released. She was jailed in 2009 for causing or allowing the death of her son, Peter, who was on the at-risk register. The case led to a nationwide review of social services. Well, this afternoon, the Justice Secretary, Dominic Raab, said the government would appeal the decision. Alicia Edwards reports.
Tracy Connolly was sentenced for causing or allowing the death of her 17-month-old son, known as Baby P, at their home in Tottenham in 2007. She admitted the offence and was handed a sentence of imprisonment for public protection with a minimum term of 5 years, and that began in 2009. It was a huge story in the capital at the time, and in 2008 it led to the resignation of then Haringey Council leader George Meehan, alongside the cabinet member for children and young people, who also left the role in wake of a report into the failings. In 2010, a serious case review said that baby P suffered as a result of incompetence on the part of almost every agency involved in his case. Baby P, who can now be named as Peter Connolly, had suffered more than 50 injuries, despite the fact that he was on the at-risk register and received as many as 60 visits from social workers, police and health professionals over a period of 8 months. Tracy Connolly was let out of prison on licence in 2013, but was recalled to prison in 2015 for breaching her parole conditions. This is the 4th review to be done by the Parole Board since she was jailed, and releasing a statement today, the Parole Board said that after considering the circumstances of her offending and time on licence, the progress made while in custody, the evidence presented at the hearing and the recommendations of the witnesses, the panel was satisfied that Ms Connolly was suitable for release. The decision was meant to be made last year, but had been delayed for more reports and information.
Alicia Edwards there with details of that Parole Board decision. Well, it comes as a man from Newham has been jailed for life with a minimum of at least 20 years for the murder of a 16-month-old girl. The Old Bailey heard how 39-year-old Kamran Haider attacked Naseba Umar in September 2019, causing catastrophic brain injuries. The toddler's mother, Asaya Amzir, called 999, wrongly claiming her daughter had fallen ill on a bus. The jury was told that Haider had a history of violence, having attacked and abused a former girlfriend and her children. He denied the charges but was convicted earlier this week. Police have released images of a man they're looking for after a noxious liquid was sprayed at people in a bookies and a post office in Bellingham. Detectives say a man launched 2 attacks within minutes in December, squirting a liquid at staff in the betting shop before fleeing and then spraying a post office worker. The victims suffered minor injuries. IKEA says it is closing its superstore in Tottenham with 450 jobs at risk. The furniture giant said the shift to online shopping and the redevelopment of the area where the store was had forced it to assess the long-term viability of the site. Just weeks ago, the firm said it was committing £1 billion to new and upgraded stores in London, with outlets in Hammersmith and the West End. And Home Office figures show just 2,700 visas have been granted to people wanting to come to the UK under the Homes for Ukraine scheme. That is, despite more than 28,000 applications. Campaigners have called the numbers woeful and urged ministers to slash red tape to help refugees reach the UK. The scheme started earlier this month and allows individuals, charities and companies to sponsor Ukrainians with no ties to Britain. The Home Office said changes to the system had been made to streamline the process. Now, the Prime Minister has praised the bravery of a Conservative MP who has come out as trans. Jamie Wallace, the MP for Bridgend in South Wales, posted a statement in the early hours of this morning detailing how he had also been blackmailed and raped. The message was posted after a Tory party gathering in which Mr Johnson reportedly made a joke about trans issues. Well, this is what the PM had to say before PMQs earlier today.
Mr Speaker, the whole House will have read the statement today from my honourable friend, the member for Bridgend. And I know that the House stands with you and will give you the support that you need to live freely as yourself.
Well, Boris Johnson faced shouts of resign from the Labour benches during Prime Minister's questions. The leader of the opposition, Sir Keir Starmer, said the PM must go over what he claimed was widespread criminality in Downing Street during lockdown. It comes after the Met said the first 20 fines for COVID rule breaking at parties was being issued.
He told the House no rules were broken in Downing Street during lockdown. The police have now concluded there was widespread criminality. The Ministerial Code says that ministers who knowingly mislead the House should resign. Why is he still here?
Hang on a minute. He's just changed his position. Sorry, Mr Speaker. I mean, we do at least expect some consistency from this human weather vane. It was only a week or so ago where he was saying that I shouldn't resign. He's got to make what is his position, Mr. Speaker? The Met must, the investigators must get on with their job. But in the meantime, they should. In the meantime, Mr. Speaker, we are going to get on with our job.
Moments there from PMQs. Let's move on to one or two other stories. Police were forced to step in at Wembley Stadium last night after football fans were left angry, waiting hours to retrieve their bags. The venue had warned people attending the England-Ivory Coast international friendly that bags larger than a piece of A4 paper would not be allowed inside. However, the policy appeared to catch many people out. Queues then stretched around the stadium after the game as people waited up to 3 hours to get those bags back. Officers eventually started handing them out themselves, and that was around close to midnight. No word yet from the FA. Engineers have spent the day trying to fix an electricity substation in Poplar after a fire yesterday knocked out power to large parts of East London. Thousands of homes in E1 and E14 have still been without power today. The fire also led to the closure of the Blackwall Tunnel and the suspension of the DLR for a time yesterday. The cause of the fire still under investigation. Let's move on to cricket, and the former England star Monty Panesar has tipped Ben Stokes to be the next captain of the Test side. Current captain Joe Root has said he has no intentions of standing down after the recent series loss to the West Indies and has only won one of his last 17 matches. Well, Henry has been speaking to Monty about the changes that he thinks are needed to produce a better team.
You know, either you got to absorb the pressure or you have a method and you think, right, when the West Indies are going to bowl really well, this is our game plan. It's okay, later on the ball will start swinging less. So then we can start playing a bit more positive strokes. And I think these are the sort of conversations, I don't know if they had them, but that's where I felt England, didn't capitalise. They just didn't have, really good game plans during the time when West Indies were threatening.
Why is it then? Because this isn't new, England collapsing under a bit of pressure. So why is it, do you think, that they continue when the going gets tough, it's a 50-50 game, England just collapse? Because we have seen this before. Because
we're so accommodated during the midsummer to play the T20 games, and then we've got the 100, that some of them shots are being actually implemented in the red ball cricket, which then enforces them not to play the moving ball very well. And when that happens, then unfortunately, you see that some of the dismissals, they were playing on the up, which, if it was like a power play moment in the ODI or T20 cricket, it's a perfect shot. But in Test cricket, it's a very high risk shot, and potentially then you're exposing, some of the top order to the swinging ball, where the openers or even number three, their job is to actually see out when the bowlers bowl really well.
Monty Panesar there speaking to Henry with regards to what he believes will be required to improve England's performances. Right, let's give you an update on the weather this evening. Some rain to come tonight, turning wintry in the early hours with some sleet and snow possible. Much colder air pushing down from the north. We are looking at 2 or 3 degrees at best for tomorrow morning's commute. And it will feel cold. The wet weather clearing pretty quickly to leave what will be a brighter day. But add on the wind chill and we're looking at highs of 2, 3 at best. That's how it will feel tomorrow. Friday, fine, bright and staying cold. Winter back with a blast after what was that beautiful week last week. Right, you're watching London Live News. Still to come this evening. Details of a new fund to help find safe and long-term housing for refugees. We'll be speaking to the British Refugee Council to get the details. Hello, welcome back. Let's take a look at some of the day's other headlines. Rules have been set out for who will be eligible for free COVID tests. From Friday, the vast majority of people will have to pay for lateral flow kits in England, despite high case numbers. As part of the government's Living with COVID plan, NHS staff caring for patients, people in hospital and those at high risk of becoming seriously ill will be contacted directly and sent tests to their homes if they have symptoms. People working in care homes, prisons and hospices will also be included. Free parking for NHS staff in England will come to an end on Friday. The fees were waived in March 2020 as part of the pandemic. Unions have criticised the move, claiming it will punish struggling staff. The Conservatives' manifesto in 2019 promised to make parking free for those in greatest need, including disabled people, frequent outpatient attenders and staff working night shifts. Well, the Department of Health says that the broader policy was temporary and had been introduced for the duration of the pandemic. And the AIDS crisis drama It's a Sin is leading this year's BAFTA TV Awards with 11 nominations. The show, which follows a group of friends during the 1980s, is up for Best Mini-Series and 4 acting awards, including Best Actor for Ollie Alexander and Best Actress for Lydia West. Other shows with multiple nominations include Time, Help and Sex Education. The awards will take place on the 24th of April, and congratulations to Malachi, part of our team here, who is among a team who've been nominated for one of those prizes. Now, a report which looks at the state of life for young people around the world says the generation is being disproportionately affected by overlapping crises, from the pandemic to economic hardships, climate change and mental health emergencies. The findings in the second annual study from Restless Development suggest 3/4 of youth civil society groups feel they've lost funding since 2020 and still have little opportunity to make decisions about their own future. It's not all negative, though, as Alex Kent from the charity explained earlier.
This has been a global collection from our youth civil society around the world. So it involves more than 800 youth organisations coming together and filling in a survey, but also doing deep dive questions. And then we've also got spotlights from about 30 youth organisations, really diverse, and from over 80 countries around the world.
There are lots of positives to pick out from what they've had to say, but let's start with the negatives, because that's often how we do things in news. These people feel threatened in many ways. They also feel perhaps that their voice is not being heard. Is that fair to say?
Yeah. I mean, what's really interesting about youth civil society is it's incredibly diverse. So whether it's youth groups working on green issues or on vaccine issues or misinformation, and the one thing that's coming through from this is actually showing that in the last 2 years, they're struggling more than ever. The pandemic's obviously had an impact on everyone, but also financially. So more than 90% said that they were struggling financially. And these are the ones that are still going, remember. There's lots of youth organisations, youth groups which should be shut as a result of finances. So that's one of the biggest threats to youth civil society is just basic funding, but also having a seat at the table, feeling valued. And increasingly, we're really seeing coming up through the theme this year is mental health. It's looking at anxiety, dealing with trauma, secondary trauma, prolonged exposure to secondary trauma and burnout. And all of that goes hand in hand with needing the support and the funding and the value to be able to do their work.
That has to be, in my opinion, and I might be wrong, but a direct consequence of the pandemic, surely, the fact that these organisations are feeling burnt out.
Well, it's the pandemic, but it's multiple crises as well. You know, lots of these youth groups especially have been working on many pandemics, be it malaria or HIV/AIDS, TB, different crises. One of the exciting spotlights in this was looking at actually young volunteers that have been working in Ebola in Sierra Leone, and then since then also the coronavirus. So I think as well as looking at what's going on in terms of the climate and the world at large and multiple wars, I think everyone's had a toll. It's taking a toll on everyone, but especially youth society, which are getting up day after day and volunteering and leading so many amazing organisations to make change happen, and often feeling that they're not being listened to. They're not being heard and definitely not being supported and valued to do the valuable work that they're doing.
We'll come on to how this information, this survey might be useful in terms of changing some of those issues, but just the positives. The one thing that stands out for me certainly is the resilience that they seem to have, despite the fact that times have been tough. There is a fight within them. You know, that's what they're telling you.
Yes, absolutely. There's some key themes that we're seeing, which is definitely being resilient, being outspoken, being led by justice, and being creative. And I think the thing that's incredibly uplifting, and just really we want to make sure that it gets heard through this report as well, is actually youth civil society across the board has been leading change. It's in every one of our communities, whether it's leading mutual aid groups or food banks or going and doing vaccine rollout or challenging misinformation or on peace. Like it's there, it's everywhere, and it's a critical part of our society, and it's a critical part for us to create a better world and to get through both this pandemic, but also all the other issues that we're doing, and it can't be taken for granted. And I think what's coming through from this report is so often, you know, youth-led change isn't on the headlines of our news agendas, but it's just this incredible celebration of young people doing it differently, having really new creative approaches, using technology and digital to really connect, like this new global youth solidarity call where young people, no matter where they are in the world, facing the same issues, are able to provide support to each other. So there's also this incredibly vibrant, rich, as you said, resilient, but kind of creative way of doing things differently. And the world definitely needs that at the moment.
Certainly gives you hope for humanity, doesn't it? That there is a group of young people wanting change like this and doing it in the way that they're doing it. Will you use this survey then as a way to lobby governments? Is that the plan?
Well, definitely governments, partners, funders, but and definitely different institutions. And maybe just to say, there isn't one set group. This is what's kind of in terms of youth of society. There isn't one set group that's just all together, but recognizing that it's essential to every one of our different sectors, every one of our different issues, and making sure that young people aren't the last at the table, or like, oh, have we involved a young person? But actually, if you give young leaders the opportunity to really lead from the onset, also to support, to fund, to just value their opinion. I think the thing that was really coming through is that young people feel that they haven't been listened to for such a long time, whether it be on climate, whether it be on health and jobs and education. So they're kind of, because of that, they're going the different way. They're not following the status quo. They're not following the kind of set agenda, but that's what's really powerful. So rather than thinking, oh, young people are confrontational or against our agenda, actually, no, if you look, you'll already see that they're paving the way for this, for a new alternative world.
That's Alex Kent there from Restless Development. Now, a new project aiming to support refugees across London to find safe and suitable long-term housing has been awarded a community grant by the Nationwide Building Society. The grant of £50,000 will allow the British Refugee Council, a charity based in London, to create safe homes for refugees and help them find work and avoid risks of homelessness. Hebe spoke to the organisation to find out more.
I'm delighted to be here to talk about a special grant from Nationwide, which we are going to be using to help refugees facing homelessness, specifically in London, find a safe, secure and sustainable home for the future. So at the Refugee Council, we work with all refugees that seek protection here in the UK, be that those that are fleeing the conflict and war in Ukraine, through to refugees fleeing Afghanistan, Iran, Iraq, Eritrea. Where there's war, persecution and violence, the Refugee Council is here to help those who seek sanctuary in the UK. So our programme will work with all refugees.
How are we seeing the cost of living affecting being able to house these refugees? I mean, we're seeing a crisis unfold in the UK and in the capital as well, of people not being able to, afford their bills, afford their homes. How's that affecting you guys?
I mean, refugees are a group of people who are disproportionately affected by homelessness. And so the cost of living will invariably have a significant impact on their ability to afford life in the UK.
And so, looking ahead now, what are the next few months looking like for you guys? What are you going to be doing?
So at the Refugee Council, it's always a very busy time for us. In particular, at the moment, we're working with a lot of people from Afghanistan who fled the Taliban during the summer months. So we're working with our client group from that area to make sure we can help them really resettle and integrate into local communities. And of course, now with the tragic events unfolding in the Ukraine, we're also mobilising our services to be able to support the hundreds or the thousands of Ukrainian refugees as they arrive. And that's on top of our existing workload supporting refugees from across the globe. So the coming weeks and months for us are not that different to the last 70 years of our existence. We are here to help people rebuild their lives.
What is the situation with people seeking refuge in the capital at the moment? Are we seeing lots of refugees coming into London, or are we seeing various visa complications keeping that number actually quite low?
I mean, we are concerned about the ease within which people from Ukraine are able to get into the UK currently. It is something that we're speaking out about and encouraging the government to waive visas and help people flee the conflict and get to the UK and find safety with far less red tape. In terms of the capital specifically, we are expecting a volume of Ukrainians to choose the capital as their home, partly because there'll be existing family, friends, networks in the capital alongside other cities across the UK. So over the coming weeks and months, we are expecting to see an uplift of refugees from Ukraine coming over to the capital. And when they get here, Refugee Council, and because of the support Nationwide has given us, will be there to help them find long-term sustainable homes.
Details there of how that grant is going to be used to help support refugees in London and beyond, particularly when it comes to finding suitable housing. You're watching London Live News with Anthony Baxter. A reminder of our top story coming up. Plus, one of the nominees for this year's Yoto Carnegie Greenaway Awards, George Butler, will be with us. The current affairs artist is currently documenting the crisis in Ukraine. He'll be sharing more on that experience after the break. Hello there, welcome back. Let's remind you of the main story this evening. The mother of baby P, the Tottenham toddler who died in 2007 after months of abuse, is set to be released from prison. The Parole board confirmed earlier that it had decided Tracy Connolly should be released. She was jailed in 2009 for causing or allowing the death of her son Peter, who was on the at-risk register. The case led to a nationwide review of social services. Well, this afternoon, the Justice Secretary, Dominic Raab, said the government would appeal the decision. Alicia Edwards reports.
Tracy Connolly was sentenced for causing or allowing the death of her 17-month-old son, known as Baby P, at their home in Tottenham in 2007. She admitted the offence and was handed a sentence of imprisonment for public protection with a minimum term of 5 years, and that began in 2009. It was a huge story in the capital at the time, and in 2008 it led to the resignation of then Haringey Council leader George Meehan, alongside the cabinet member for children and young people, who also left the role in wake of a report into the failings. In 2010, a serious case review said that Baby P suffered as a result of incompetence on the part of almost every agency involved in his case. Baby P, who can now be named as Peter Connolly, had suffered more than 50 injuries, despite the fact that he was on the at-risk register and received as many as 60 visits from social workers, police and health professionals over a period of 8 months. Tracy Connolly was let out of prison on licence in 2013, but was recalled to prison in 2015 for breaching her parole conditions. This is the 4th review to be done by the Parole Board since she was jailed, and releasing a statement today, the Parole Board said that after considering the circumstances of her offending and time on licence, the progress made while in custody, the evidence presented at the hearing and the recommendations of the witnesses, the panel was satisfied that Ms Connolly was suitable for release. The decision was meant to be made last year, but had been delayed for more reports and information.
Now, the British current affairs artist George Butler has been shortlisted for a prestigious award for his debut book, Drawn Across Borders. His work, reporting on migration during global crises, using art and sketching, has been recognised by the Yoto Carnegie Greenaway Awards, the UK's longest-running children's book prize. Tanya has been speaking to George about what it's been like working in war zones and his current project in Ukraine.
I mean, you get a bit of a feeling when you meet people, whether they've got a story to tell, whether they're willing to talk about it. But there's no sort of formula other than drawing in certain places, parts of the world, usually not very often visited places like Syria or Tajikistan or Afghanistan. Drawing is a great way in. It allows time to sit down and talk to people, and it's unthreatening and open, and all of those nice things. Allows time as well.
I can imagine that the primary aim of your work is, to spread the message about migration in areas of conflict and the difficulties that so many people face. But it must also be nice to be recognised, which your work has been in this award. How were you feeling about that?
Really nice to be recognised, mainly not least because it's been sort of 8 years of work. But also there's this great relief when I think about the people in that book, like Mama Nazak and the boy that she adopted, and Abdullah, the Tajik man. The contract, if you can put it like that I had with them was, I'll tell me your story and I'll tell other people about it.
The award recognises, books that sort of appeal and reach out to children and young people. What's it like taking such complex and difficult subjects to talk about, like war and migration, and putting it into a book that speaks to children? How do you make it accessible?
It's been quite easy, actually. I find in the classrooms that I've stood and spoken about it in, there's often been great diversity, especially in South London, and the questions are always open and almost better and more direct than adult ones. But the drawings weren't done and I hope this is where it sort of stands out a little bit, they weren't done for children, they were done for the newspapers. And so it hasn't been an exercise in trying to dumb it down or simplify. It's just been an exercise in showing it exactly as I saw it. In a way, yeah, the illustrations don't need to be simplified or in bright colours for kids to understand them. They can relate to them, and they can relate to the sort of other people that they see with similar backgrounds in their classrooms.
Now, George, I want to ask you, because I know that you're out in Ukraine at the moment. Firstly, what's your experience been like out there? How are you doing? And what are you working out there? If so, what kind of projects are you working on?
Well, I'm doing fine, thank you. It's, as ever, the people inside the country who don't have the sort of choice to be here or to leave that I think are always much braver. I'm working on similar sort of themes that you might see in the book. I drew this extraordinary old lady yesterday. She's called Madame Olga, and she was 99, survived the Great Famine 80 years ago, then Second World War. She was a slave, Nazi slave in Dresden between 1943 and 1945, and she's now too old to get out of her top floor flat to get down when the sirens ring. And whenever anybody visits, she thinks they're going to take her away, and that's the last thing she wants from her beloved Ukraine. So the sort of humanity is around every corner. It's brought out by situations that we've seen on the news. But Kyiv is not, at the moment, like Mariupol or Kherson or Kharkiv. It's a testament to the Ukrainian armed forces that it isn't. But it is right around the edges, places like Brovary and Irpin and Bucha. So we can sort of hear it and we can see it in the volunteer work and the territorial defence around the streets in Kiev. But for the most part, it's at a distance. Of course, until it's not. But at the moment, it is.
George there, and the Yoto Carnegie Awards take place later this year. They are in June. Right, stay with us still to come before 7. She describes herself as a struggling pop star turned comedian, Jenny Bede, on bringing her autobiographical musical to Soho Theatre. Jenny telling us all next. Hello there, welcome back. Now, using her love for musical theatre, the comedian Jenny Bede is bringing her semi-autobiographical musical to Soho Theatre next week. Writing and performing her own songs, she pokes fun at, in her words, her days as a budding pop star and struggling actor. She's been speaking to Tanya and also let us in on what new material she's working on for her next show. Before we hear from Jenny, let's just see her in action.
Comedian, writer, actor, singer, chameleon, fighter, laughter winner. I can do it all. It's not very hard. I'm so musical. I'll sing every part.
It's been interesting. I mean, luckily it wasn't. I'm not a hard-hitting political comedian, so it was never that relevant in the first place. You know, it was something where the subject matter, I think, is I like to think evergreen. You know, so it hasn't been. I haven't had to rewrite, you know, huge rounds of material. There definitely has been just getting my head back into that, you know, into that show that, you know, 3 years ago, I felt like before 2 lockdowns and a baby, I was a completely different person. So just trying to remember it and yeah, there have been some tweaks. But to be honest, on the whole, I've actually really enjoyed relearning it. So and I'm looking forward to doing it. So I think it would have been much harder if I'd have started rereading it and going, no, I can't, this is awful. I can't put this up. So no, it's been good.
You mentioned there a little bit about the time frame and the things that have happened in your life since you first originally did the piece. Are you tempted, or have you been tempted to change it? Because you come along as an artist, you learn different things, your life experience must inform what you do.
Yeah, I mean, I have been tempted, but on the whole, when you do comedy, you realise the more material you have, the more shows you can do. So that I am going back to Edinburgh this year actually with a new show. So I'm keeping this very much as what it was, which was a successful show. I was really lucky, and then I'm putting all the new material into this unknown new show in the summer. So it's that thing of trying to write a new show while trying to remember an old show. So
go on then, tell us what you can about the show, and what it follows.
I played a secretary and a PA and an admin assistant. All three said, "Have a nice day." I played 5 receptionists and I'm the best at it. I've done it all. Look at my range.
It's about my love of musical theatre, I suppose. It's sort of about as well this idea that Lin-Manuel Miranda, who wrote Hamilton because he couldn't get any parts, and so he thought, if I write myself the perfect part, then I'll work. And I mean, yeah, he's done all right. So it was sort of based on that idea, like, okay, I have played waitress after receptionist, after bored girlfriend, basically. And I've been lucky to work, don't get me wrong, but I'm almost always am just the person that's got like one line. And some people might go, "Do I recognise you?" And you're like, "No, not really." It's not there's not a huge variety to what I've done. So sort of the conceit of the show anyway is that I'm there to write myself a show to star in. But it kind of, it involves all the things that I'm interested in, and it involves, I was in a girl band a long, long time ago, and that creeps into the narrative as well. So I talk about that a bit.
Thank you so much for coming. There are so many shows on. My name is Jenny Bede. Some of you might know me already, I'm not sure. Yeah, oh, thank you. So you may have been a fan of the early noughties girl band that I was in, Cherry Falls? No.
And how do you come up with, because a lot of what you do is, songs, sort of poking fun at different subjects. How do you come up with these songs, and what material is it that inspires you to write and be funny with it?
I made a joke before. I said I wasn't, a hard-hitting political comedian, but there are a lot of sort of, social commentary. There's a lot of stuff going on at the moment that you can't help but, want to get a bit involved with. Like, not every this is the thing. I think one of the problems with being a comedian or just a person these days, everyone thinks they have to have some hot take on every single subject, and we don't. Not everyone needs to hear from us all the time. Like, it's okay to not know how you feel about something. But on the whole, if I can find a fun way of, setting it to music, then I will.
Running home, feeling energized, beating the hour commute whilst getting much needed exercise. Look to my right, saw a Ford Galaxy. Curb crawling me, hey baby.
And you've talked about your upcoming material, like what you're going to be taking to Edinburgh. Is that more inspired by what's happening at the moment, or are you able to tell us anything about that?
Yeah, so that's called The First Pregnant Woman in the World, and it's about sort of the huge life change of having a baby. It's about how it's so normal. Everyone says to you all the time, women have been having babies for millennia. It's very natural. It's no big deal. It is a big deal. I think if men were having babies, we'd be hearing about it all the time. So it's sort of about this, in a sort of heteronormative relationship anyway, that it's so hard to get away from these gender roles that are sort of inflicted on you. And so it's kind of about that, and it's about mental health, because there's a huge crossover there with sleep deprivation and being a new mum, and also kind of like how you square the circle of in your head of bringing an innocent, lovely baby into a world that's effectively on fire. So it's sort of I think a lot of people had babies in lockdown, and I think a lot of people have similar thoughts about what are we doing? Like, the world's just getting worse and worse, it seems. So it's sort of around that. It's much more, I guess, more personal in some ways, yeah.
Jenny there speaking to Tanya. Jenny B, the musical, is on at Soho Theatre next week, the 7th to the 9th of April. Finally, after auditioning for a part in Dirty Dancing in the West End, Charlotte Coggin missed out on a role and went back to working as an usher in the same theatre until cast illness last week saw her get an unexpected call-up to perform in the show. Days later, on Saturday, she made her West End debut at the Dominion Theatre. Charlotte took a quick break in between rehearsals to tell Alicia how it was going.
I've worked back and forth at the Dominion since 2016. It's just a really good job to have in between like performing jobs, and like the managers have always been so super nice. And then so I've seen like the choreographer and the producer around, and due to unforeseen circumstances they needed an extra girl, so they literally just called. Well, they asked the managers here if they could have me join the other side of the building, and called my agent, and then literally the next day I was in for rehearsals. So I've had 2 days rehearsals, and then made my West End debut on Saturday, which was just incredible.
What was it like, obviously, going from watching it from the other side to suddenly being in it? It must have been such a surreal experience.
Absolutely crazy. Because I've watched the dancers and they're all just incredible, and like I know how full out it is. So I felt like, okay, I know what I'm getting myself in for here. I'm actually in rehearsals at the moment, just trying to learn a bit more of the show. But yeah, it was electric. Like, it's just a completely different view. Like, to be able to see the whole audience instead of like being at the back, like telling people off for filming and stuff. And yeah, it was just like I got to see my first show at the very end. Like, all my front of house team that I've just been working with, they all like lined up. I was just so emotional. Like, they've all been so supportive.
The Dominion's such a huge stage to make a West End debut on as well. How did it all go on Saturday? Was it all okay?
Yeah, it actually went really well. I think adrenaline just took over, because I was quite knackered because I'd done like non-stop rehearsing. But yeah, it was just the cast was so supportive, and Austin, who's the choreographer, and Carly just like absolutely helped me through everything. So yeah, it's been incredible.
It really is a sort of story that dreams are made of. How did you feel when you realised this was really going to happen?
I don't think it actually sunk in until the morning of, when I was getting my wig done, and I was like, oh, okay. I'm actually going to be on that stage today. Yeah, it was such a whirlwind. Like, I still don't believe what's happening, to be honest.
You've been working for some time. What's your journey been up to this point?
Yeah, so I've been quite lucky. My last job just before this, I was a dance captain in a show called Top Hat. That was brilliant. I will be soon performing in South Pacific again. We're doing a UK tour and going to Sadler's. So like, I have been quite lucky that just the Dominion's always been something that I've come back to when I've had like a few months in between shows, or I don't know when my next job's going to be. So it really does just feel like home.
It's a very normal experience, isn't it? Lots of jobbing actors work as ushers in the West End. How's the rest of the team and everybody working front of house taken the fact that you've suddenly got this big opportunity?
Oh, they've just been so lovely. So like, I've seen them at stage door, and in between the shows on Saturday, like I bumped into them like on the lunch break, and like it was just made me so happy. Like, they've all been messaging me. It's just nice to look out and see them, really, because it's a familiar, encouraging face.
There we go. That is what's said to be the right place at the right time. Dirty Dancing at the Dominion Theatre until the 16th of April. A final check on the weather for you. Some rain to come this evening, turning increasingly wintry in the early hours with the possibility for some sleet, maybe even some snow in places. Much colder air pushing down from the north. We're looking at 2 or 3 degrees at best for tomorrow morning's commute. That band of wet, sleety weather will clear to leave a brighter day behind, but feeling bitterly cold in the wind. Add on the chill factor tomorrow, 2-3 degrees at best. Friday, fine, bright, staying cold. Winter, I'm afraid, is back. That's all from the news team. Thanks for watching. See you tomorrow at 6.